What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode. And in this episode, I'm going to show you guys how I work up or process my deer so that it can go from this to this. Now, this is just the way that I like to do this. There's a lot of different ways that people can process deer. And I'm sure some of you watching are going to have your own tricks and tips. So please drop them down in the comments. But this is just the way that I usually do it. So let's get into it.
My name is Mark Barton, and I'm what you would call an adult onset hunter. Growing up overseas, I thought hunting was only something people did in the movies. When I moved back to my homeland, I was determined to learn, but nobody would show me the ropes. I had to teach myself through trial and error. Once I started to figure it out, I vowed to create the resource that I never had, to educate, entertain, and inspire others just like me. Join me on my adventures, learn from my successes and my mistakes. Welcome to Swamp and Stomp.
Alright guys, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to skin this thing out here. Typically, when you kill a deer, you're going to be able to hang it by the tendons back here, but I cut the hooves off because I use them to train my dog for tracking. Otherwise, I would just hang this thing up and skin it out that way, but since I can't do that, I'm just going to skin it out on the tailgate. And I don't want to bring it inside to the kitchen where we're going to do the butchering until I've got all this hair off, because this hair, like, once it gets stuck on the meat, it's just such a pain in the butt. So I'm trying to like separate the working stations where there's going to be hair and where there's not going to be hair. So let's get started. Alright guys, so we are going to take these 2 quarters off before we flip this thing over and skin the other side. So your front quarter is actually incredibly simple. As you can see, it's like not really attached. Like it's actually shocking how little there is holding these on. So you can literally just come right up underneath it like that and just cut and just keep on cutting. There's the shoulder blade right there. Boom. There's your front shoulder, off. All right, so the hind quarter is a little more difficult. There's a ball joint in here, so I come around the back here and cut right down the middle. So you hit that pelvis, and then just kind of keep on going. We're gonna come right down the back here, and our back strap is right here. We're gonna find the spine, which is right there. We're gonna cut in right to the spine. We're going to go right down the remainder of the spine here, and then there's like a knuckle here. We're going to find that knuckle and cutting around that like so, and then we're joining back to the cut that we were making here like that, and then we just have to find that ball joint, which is hidden inside of here. So just keep on going. There it is. You can hear it separating. See that ball joint there? There's a tendon. We're gonna cut that tendon. Just like that. Keep on cutting, and there we go. Just keep following that pelvis until it is free. And there we have the hind quarter, or the round of a deer. So what we're gonna do, so we don't get this meat all dirty, we're gonna take the skin and put it back on there so it protects that meat. And we're gonna roll it over. And then we are going to do the same thing on this side. So we're gonna cut the head off. So typically you want to go up to the atlas joint, which is like right here. We're just gonna, you can kind of feel around with your knife and find where the so you can see where that joint is. It's like right here. So we're just gonna cut in, and you can see that joint right there already. So you're just gonna cut away all the meat right through the esophagus. Again, much easier when it's hanging, but it is what it is. Working with what I got. And then usually a little bit of once you get it to do a full rotation, it's just hanging on by skin. You can just cut right through. There we go. All right, so now we will take the deer and run it into the house and freak out my wife. All right, so one thing I like to do is just try and pick up as much moisture as you can. Moisture is where bacteria grows, so I like to wipe it all down, get rid of as much of it as you can, and in doing this, you also get rid of some of that hair that we left on it. And now we'll start breaking it down. All right, now that we're in here, we'll take the hind quarter off, just like the last one. There we go. File that one on there. Pull this one off. All right, and then the rest of the meat. Oh, of course the back straps. We gotta get the back straps off. That's her favorite part. All right. Flip this around. Oh, Maddie's excited about that.
I think Ziggy's also excited. He's hovering.
He's excited, but he won't eat any of this. All right, back straps. So these are pretty simple. You just find the spine, put your knife in right along the spine, cut down until it won't go any further. And then just follow the spine all the way down, like so. And this is the top of the rib cage that you're hitting when you cut down there. Just keep going. Like this. And then you can see right here where the other edge of the back strap is. And in fact, when the deer is aged, like this one, you can actually just like pull it if you wanted to. You just come in where those ribs are and just cut in like so. Follow the ribs.
Guys want more light?
Sure. And then there's where the arrow, one of the arrows went in. Keep on cutting. And then once you've cut those, it's really just attached by a couple little tendons. You can just grab a hold of the back strap and just cut wherever it's still holding on. Back strap. Another way to get the back strap out is instead of coming in from the side, you can actually cut down to that spine right there, and you can kind of peel away and follow that bone. It probably gets a little more of that meat. Say we're leaving like nothing behind. And once you get to the edge, cut out, and then you can literally just work your way down. Keep cutting and pulling. Cutting and pulling, that's pretty much all that butchering is. Get out of there. Backstrap number 2. All right, and this is the part where you want to have a bucket or something where you're going to put stuff that's going to go in the grind pile, and you're going to have a place to put trimmings that are not going anywhere, which can either be my trash, my garbage disposal, or this garbage disposal. All right, anyway, so all this meat up here on the neck, all this stuff on the outside, we're gonna cut it off, and that's going in the grind pile. So here's what I do with the neck. I literally, just like I did with the back strap, I'll just follow the spine and just cut right to that spine, and then just go around the spine and pull off. There's some hair right there, so I'm going to avoid that, but go down to the spine and then just follow the spine around. The spine's pretty bulky, but there's a lot of meat around it, so I just kind of peel this as I cut and get around that spine. A lot of people just leave this meat behind. Those people are losers. Literally, because they're losing meat. Maddie is ready on cleanup duty. All right, there's the esophagus. There's a lot of little glands between the meat and the esophagus, so kind of cut all that fat away, leave those glands behind, and then we will remove the esophagus, and then we can cut the meat off the other side as well, but we'll do that in a minute. A lot of people don't do this, but there's meat between the ribs here, and I don't want it to go to waste. So I will literally go in between every rib and cut all that meat out of there and throw it in the grind pile. Like so. All right, so as you can see, we got pretty much all the meat off of this thing. If your deer doesn't look this clean by the time you're finished, you're not finished. So this is something that I'm a big believer in. I don't take off any of the silver skin or any of that stuff at this stage. I leave it on because if anything's gonna get freezer burned, it's gonna be the stuff that I leave on there. So I'll cut that stuff off before I cook it. So backstrap's about as easy as it gets. What I do is I usually just cut it into quarters. Sort of like this. Then I do like this. And this one, a broadhead went through, so I'm gonna cut around that. A little smaller piece there. And you know what you do with that? You give it to the dogs. Who wants a snacky? She doesn't know how to catch. So this is my preferred way of packaging up meat, and it's mostly because it's the cheapest way, because I don't have a vacuum sealer. But honestly, this way works so good, and the end result is pretty awesome. So this is just freezer paper. I bought this roll on Amazon for like 20 bucks, and it's a lot. You can package a ton of meat with this. Take one of these, and I'm cooking for me and my wifey, so I usually just do 2 pieces of backstrap. stick them in there, and we're just gonna roll it up. And you just try and push out as much of that air as you can and roll it up. When you get to the end here, we're gonna, again, push as much of the air out as you can. And it's like literally like folding up a present. Just like that. And then this is like freezer tape, but you can, it's literally just masking tape. You can just use masking tape as well. The only nice thing about this is it comes in a small enough roll that you can put it on a little tape dispenser. And there we go. We got 2 pieces of backstrap packaged up. So we're gonna do all these other ones, and then I like to label them. We'll come up with whatever labels you like, but what I usually do is I'll put V for venison and then BS backstrap, and then I'll put the date. It is, what is October? So 10/24, and that's it. All right, here we have one of the front shoulders, and we are just gonna, all of this I put into the grind pile because there's just not very like big pieces of meat here that you can really use for anything else. A little bit of dirt here, so I'm gonna feed that to Maddie, who is going to throw up from having so much meat. And yeah, since this is going in the grind pile, there's like no good way to go about it. Just start cutting pieces of meat off. It doesn't really matter. Just cut them off. I usually just like to cut them into smaller pieces. It's gonna make it easier to put it in my grinder later. We're down to the last major pieces, the hindquarters. And so there's a few things you can do with these. One, you can just turn it all into grind pile. You can cut up these pieces and throw it in the grind pile if that's what you want to do. You can also leave like a whole roast, so you can just take the shank off. This is the shank right here. Take that off and leave this whole. You can do a full oven roast, which I've actually made a video about before, and you can watch that up there or there. I don't remember which side it shows up on. But I already have one of those in the freezer, so I'm not going to do that with this. But there's actually a couple nice muscle groups in here that you can use for making jerky or for doing like stir fries and stuff. So I'm going to cut a couple of those out, and we'll cut those up into little thin slices, package those up, and then the rest is going to go into the grind pile. So just for funsies, even though I'm not going to keep this for an oven roast, I'm going to show you how you would prepare it. We're just going to take this shank out here, and there's this joint, as you can see. So you got to come up, you can kind of see there's like a bone, basically like a kneecap. You want to come in underneath that. You can just cut through these tendons here, come in, just start separating this out. And then cut in right there. See how that like loosened everything up? Cut those tendons, and it starts coming apart. There's your shank. If anybody likes making ossobuco stew, these are great for that. But we are just going to take all this meat, put it in the grind pile. And don't worry about these tendons. They have lots of collagen, and collagen's good for you. So I'm just going to cut right down to the bone. And then I've been saying this all along, just follow the bone. Is that what I've been saying? What have I been, something about bone?
Cypress was like,
what, bone? I like bone.
she is a hip.
Alright, so if you wanted to keep this as just like an oven roast, like in the video that I just showed you guys, you would keep it just like this. Don't take any of the silver skin off. Deal with that later because, like I said, if anything's going to freezer burn, you want it to be the stuff you don't want to eat anyway. But we are not going to keep this thing like this. We're going to break it down. So what I like to do is you come in here, you can see this seam right here. We're going to cut down this seam, and we're going to go right down to the bone. And we're just going to take the whole bone right out. Bone out, and we can pick some of that meat off later. And once we're here, we can split this into the major food groups. So you can kind of just rip that apart like that. Cut away there. There's a little bit of glandiness right there. So that is the, I forget what they call that thing, but this little teeny guy right here, this is your tri-tip. Very tender piece of meat, but it's very small. Some people like to do like stir fries and stuff with it, but I just don't feel like it's worth it because it's so small. So, grind pile. And this is, I don't even know what it's called. I think it's the ham, I think they call this thing. Take all this glandy stuff out of here. All right, now we're getting into the good stuff here. This is some sort of round. This is the eye of round. I know this piece because this is actually a nice one to do like stir fries and stuff with. It's a small piece, but it's a lot like a mini backstrap. That thing right there. And then this hunk of meat, whatever it's called. But so some of these larger pieces are good for doing jerky and stir fries. So I'm gonna cut this up and I'm gonna make some jerky meat with it. And I'm only gonna do that one just to show you guys. So what you want to do for these jerky cuts is you want to get all this like stuff off. Remember how I was talking about don't cut that stuff off because it's the part you want to have freezer burn? Well, in this case, we are cutting it off. And you know what? It's still good for the grind pile. Basically, when you're done, what you want is you just want to end up with a piece of meat that has no skinny bits to it. Just meat. Like so. It's pretty good. And then for your jerky, or for your stir fry stuff, you want to cut against the grain. You can see the muscle fibers are running like this. So we're going to cut like this. You just want to cut nice diagonal thin little strips like that, about 1/4 inch. And those are beautiful for making jerky. There we go. So there's a pile of jerky. We'll do a couple more pieces with this one here. That's how you make jerky. All right, everybody. Thank you for staying tuned in as long as you have. We have gotten to the grinding phase. But before we do that, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So the grinding phase is pretty straightforward. Obviously, we're going to grind up all the meat to start with. If this is your first time that you're going to be butchering a deer or a hog, you're probably wondering what kind of grinder to buy. This one here is an STX International, the Magnum. It's an 1800 watt grinder or a 1/2 horsepower. I would say if you're going to buy a grinder, this is one area you don't want to skimp on. Don't get a 1/4 horsepower. They suck. They make it, I mean, they'll do it, but it's so slow. The 1/2 horsepower really grinds through stuff pretty quickly. A 3/4 horse is even better. But this thing's done really well for me, so I'm pretty happy with it. So there's a couple different ways that I'll use ground meat. The first is just simple, ground chuck or whatever the hell they call it, that I use, for cooking spaghetti and taco meat and things like that. And that's what I'm making a whole bunch of today. The other thing I'll do often is bacon burgers, but I already have a ton of those in the freezer from the last deer that I got. For the bacon burgers, it's literally what it sounds like. You grind up some bacon and mix it in with your ground meat. I do 1/3, 25% to 33% bacon, and those burgers are incredible. What I do for this ground chuck, or 80% deer meat, and then 20% I literally use this mild breakfast sausage. It's mostly fat. It's got a little bit of flavor in it. There's like a little bit of seasoning, but it's very mild in flavor. And I find this just so much easier to use than like trying to source, you know, back fat or whatever kind of fat the butcher can give you. This is always ready to go at every grocery store. So that's what I use. I'm sure somebody's gonna have something to say about it. I don't care. This is what I do. The last thing I'll do with ground meat is only when I get hogs, I will make breakfast sausage, and my breakfast sausage recipe is awesome, and I'll make a separate video about that, of butchering a hog. But I haven't shot a hog in a while. Tried to shoot one last night, but I failed. Check this clip out. All right, so one of the important things about grinding meat I've found is making sure that there's not a lot of extra moisture. So as I go through this pile of meat, as we get to the bottom of this pot, there's going to be a little bit of moisture that's built up just from it draining off of the meat overnight. And I'm going to grab some paper towels and I'm going to dab that up as I go. But other than that, we are just grinding this meat up. One thing you should always do before you start grinding is clear your blades in the grinder, because all the sinew, as it grinds, all of the like tendon stuff that it's not able to grind will just kind of wrap around the backside of that blade. You can just pull that off every now and then and throw it in the trash. But I like to grind up as much tendon as possible because there's a lot of really good nutrition in those tendons. It's time for mixing the meat. So I always use a scale so I can get this as close as possible. And like I said, I'm trying to do 20% of that pork sausage. So I'm gonna mix everything in here. I want to mix 4 pounds of meat. All right, that's about, so that's 4 pounds of meat right there. And then I just take one of these, cut the top off. And this is why I like using these. They're just so easy to work with. And then just use your hands, mix it up. And I like to do this in small batches, because if you grind all your meat first and then start doing this, you'll find it's a real pain in the butt, because it's just too much meat to be able to mix properly. So that's why I like to do batches of 4 pounds, add in a pound of the fatty stuff. All right, so I ran out of the pork sausage, but this is most of the deer is right in there. And then we've got the whole cuts right there, and there's 1.8 pounds of ground meat left over, so I'm gonna make some bacon burgers. So I literally just buy bacon, whatever's the cheapest. It's usually the Oscar Mayer stuff. Oscar Mayer, I'm not sponsored. It's usually the cheapest option, but sometimes you'll get like some BOGO deals that are like cheaper. So whatever's cheapest, keep it in the fridge because it makes the fat like kind of harden up. and then just run it through the grinder like you would anything else. Another good option for bacon is if you go to Walmart, or I think Winn-Dixie actually has it as well. They have this bacon tips and bits. It's just like a package of like random little leftover cuts of meat from the butcher that they then cured like bacon. So it's like, it's really good for this, but I didn't go to Winn-Dixie. I went to Publix, so I just got regular old bacon. All right, y'all, so this is all the meat. This is the bacon burgers, and this is the regular ground venison with pork fat. And it's time to package it up. So as you can see, it's like 35 pounds probably of ground meat. So this can take a while unless you have a system. So this is how I like to do things. I cut up all my freezer paper in advance, so I have a whole bunch of them here. I've got my tape ready to go. I've got my marker. And then most processing like kits, if you buy a grinder, a lot of times you'll get these claws. If not, buy some of these, because what this allows you to do is pick up the meat without getting your hands dirty so that you can handle that freezer paper. So I'm not really measuring this, just kind of get a nice dollop that looks about a pound. And then just like we were doing with the other meat when we were packaging it, just try to press out as much of the air as you can. Roll it up and then come in on the sides, same thing. Press that paper in as far as you can so you're getting all that air out. Fold it up and tape it up. All right, that's 30 something to go. All right, so eventually as you start doing these, you're gonna start running out of space. So you gotta start moving some into the freezer. And I like to wait until I've got them all packaged up before I start labeling, because it just makes it easier to not have to like wash your hands to hold the pen and all that stuff. So for venison ground meat, I just put VG. For the bacon burgers, I put VBB. I already put those in the freezer though. All right, guys, this is the pile. This is basically a whole deer worked up into backstrap. We've got some jerky pieces in there, but most of it is just ground meat. So if you're taking your deer to a processor, you're not getting that much meat back. Question that processor. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you guys. It's really hard to like show this process in a video and make it short and concise to the point where you guys will actually watch it. So I did my best. Hopefully you guys liked it.